Welcome back to AJ's World of Bodybuilding, and today we're joined by the son of a legend on his way to making his own legacy in the world of bodybuilding. He came onto the scene winning in his pro debut at the New York Pro. He's known for his beautiful posing and tremendous size. Let me welcome you to Sergio Oliva Jr. And remember to subscribe. Welcome everyone to AJ's World of Bodybuilding. And today we're joined by a very, very, very special guest all the way from Dubai, is it?
Dubai, yep.
Sergio Oliva Jr. is in the building. And I remember one time you weren't sure who I was. And I was like, oh, Sergio, Olivia, I love you. And you're like, bro, you don't even know my last name. How can you love me?
That sounds like some shit I would say.
Yeah. So first of all, I remember reading about you in the magazines many, many, many years ago, before anyone really knew who you were coming up. And I was like, this guy, he looks like a marathon runner. Why are they even promoting him as like a big, because at the time I was like 22, 23, and they were only promoting like Jay Cutler, and it was like freaks. And we saw you in the magazine, so we couldn't understand. And now, looking at you, Sergio, 200 and, I don't know what it is, 90, 280 pounds, 300, God knows.
I'm a lot more than that, but yeah, exactly. That's probably the amount I've gained since that picture.
You've done incredible, incredible hard work, Sergio. Feel proud, Sergio. You're one of the biggest athletes in the entire world, Sergio. Coming from where you came from, it's not all about placings. It's are you proud of what you've achieved with your physique, coming from where you were coming from?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably why I think you have a lot of respect for me, because you followed me since then, where I think a lot of people haven't really kind of followed me, until recently. So they don't really realize that I've gained, I don't know what it is in kilos, but it's like 150 pounds. So it's like a whole nother person I put on my body. And it's just one of those things that, because my father is who he is, I'm not going to really get the credit for that, for putting all that weight on my body. It's just going to kind of be like, yeah, whatever. Aceto said it's the best. The best description that goes with me is that whenever I do anything good, I gain an insane amount of muscle. I think last year I gained like 11 pounds in 1 year, which is huge at, this stage of my career. If I place well, if I win my pro debut, if I place, in the first call out with RAMY and Bonog and Dexter at that Arnold, it's just kind of like, yeah, well, he's Sergio's son. It's kind of like, yeah, it's not a big deal. But then if I don't do well, or I don't do something up to someone's standards, then it's just like, oh my God, see, I told you he's nothing. He's never going to be it. So it just depends on how you look at things. But I think with you following me since I was literally, like you said, I look like a marathon runner, but I was actually a swimmer. That's why I was so skinny. And yeah, I remember I got to be in Muscle and Fitness, and I thought it was going to be so cool. And it's funny looking back at those pictures, I'm just like, holy shit, I had no business, even being in a tank top, let alone in a magazine. So I think that's the cool part of it, is to see my body transform. You would have to have been there from the beginning. And unfortunately, the majority of the fans today that are on social media, I have to iterate this, that not all the best fans are on social media. A lot of the old school guys and girls, they just don't really get on Instagram. That's not their thing. So over time, we've started to believe that the majority voice of bodybuilding is what's on social media. And that's not true, because majority of the voice on social media have probably followed the sport for like 5 years, if that. A lot of them have just followed the sport since Nick Walker started competing, so they don't really know. They don't know that to fill out someone's body at 6 foot, being so skinny like I was, it is going to take 10 plus years. So I'm really proud of the amount of weight that I put on, in a slow, steady pace. But I learned at the last Arnold that I did, I was the biggest person on stage. I learned now size isn't everything. You know, I think in the beginning when I was so skinny, it was my main thing is fill out my chest, fill out my back. Everything sucks, you know, in my head. And I needed to fill it out. And then I realized I did, everything could be a little bit better. Everyone's back could be bigger. But for the most part, I did fill out my body. But then I learned at the Arnold, now I need to figure out how to condition this much more weight on my body. And that's what bodybuilding is. And I think that's a really hard thing for people to understand, especially short guys in bodybuilding. Because short guys in bodybuilding, they grow, make the weight, and then they start figuring out how to cut it up. Where taller people, it takes almost your whole entire career to fill out your body. And then the next stage starts, which is what I'm on now. And I need to figure out how to take all of this weight because I was 285 on stage at the Arnold. Now, if I can turn that weight into just shredded, then we're talking about kind of like unbeatable type of things. Because if someone's that tall, it's like a Dennis Wolf. If Dennis Wolf was just peeled out of his mind, there was no one that was beating him, maybe besides Ronnie. Yeah. And it's just when you go to shows in real life, in person, which a lot of people don't do anymore, the taller person who's, aesthetically pleasing, like a Tony Freeman, Paul Dillette, it's just so much attention grabbing. That you might on social media like the shorter guy because he's standing by himself and he looks humongous. But when he gets on stage next to a taller guy, the taller guy will always win. And that's why Steve Kuklo does really well. That's why Cedric killed it. Even not even being peeled out of his mind, Cedric whooped ass. Sean, Roden, he whooped ass. And it's just that taller physique. So that's all I have to do now. If I could just kind of perfect the conditioning, then I'll be able to answer your question and say, yes, I'm really proud of myself because growing is only half of bodybuilding. Is learning how to manipulate it and shape it is the hard part.
No, it was impressive when you are the biggest guy on the Arnold Classic stage, Sergio. It's pretty impressive.
It's crazy to say, yeah. Even one of the judges, Tyler Mannion, he's going to be the new president of sport. He said that to me, and it wasn't until he said that where he's like, man, you are one of the biggest people on the planet now. And if you could just come in just shredded now and not worry about being big, you would win hands down. And I think, obviously, he's a very important person, telling you that. But I think it just took someone else telling me, like, man, you're big. You don't have to worry about being big anymore. It was a huge compliment. And it kind of really like made me wake up and realize, okay, so let's just get cut.
Do you like that we have a young guy like Tyler now as the face of the judging? And isn't it cool that we have did you know Tyler from before, by the way, since you're always been in the game?
Right, yeah. So I've actually been really close with JR, which is Jim Mannion's son. And we just kind of always clicked because he's probably the only person besides me that has a famous name in bodybuilding, being a junior, but he's not a bodybuilder, so people don't know that. But being Jim Mannion Jr. is almost just as kind of nerve-wracking it is as being Sergio Oliva Jr. So we've always been kind of cool. He was at my show when I won my pro card. He was at the New York Pro when I won. So he's been there, and he was there when my dad held me up in '84. So He loves to talk about how he's been at every, really important thing in my life or my career. So Tyler's just always been kind of there. He was a wrestler for so long. And I actually used to wrestle too before I got into bodybuilding. So we would always kind of talk a little stuff about wrestling. I would talk to his dad about how his matches are going. But yeah, he was just kind of like me when I was young, just kind of a young kid kind of hanging around the shows, But
so I want to ask, before we talk about competitive plans, because we want to know, but you done something really big. You moved, it looks like you moved away from the place everybody wants to go to, America, especially us outside of America. We always say, oh, I want to live in America. I want to live in America. And people are doing a lot of crazy things just to go to America. But you did the opposite. You left America to Dubai. Tell us why and how is it going?
I know it's funny when you put it like that because when I came here, everybody is like, oh, I can't wait to go to America. So it makes you realize there's a lot of things in America that you definitely take for granted when you're not there. But on a bodybuilding level and for my career, I needed to make a change. I needed to do something that re-sparks my love for this. Because to tell you the truth, it started to become not fun anymore. I think it's just one of those things that, it's like working at your favorite restaurant. Once you work at your favorite restaurant, you don't like the food anymore. You see behind the doors how things are ran and how things are made. It starts to kind of kill it for you. So I started to realize I was just kind of doing it as like a job,
Okay.
and you could see too, even in my routines, my last routine I did was just shit. It was just horrible.
It
And
was
I think in the
wasn't
back of my head,
it wasn't shit compared to what we see from the other guy, but it wasn't your
well,
typical.
yeah, but yeah, if you're always going to compare a routine to everybody else, then yeah, of course it's going to be amazing. But I'm comparing it to my best or other people's best, from the past that I study. So, but either way, no matter what, I wasn't being my best. I wasn't excited to go to the gym. And I'm living in San Diego, California. It's like the most beautiful place, in the country. It's just the best weather all year round. The gym there is just an amazing gym. And I have all these things, and I'm still not really loving bodybuilding anymore. And I just kind of wanted to do something really drastic to kind of make me, one, be focused again, but also start to have fun because I wasn't having fun. And I didn't want to burn out. A lot of guys burn out, and I've seen them, growing up in the sport. You see guys, and you're just like, man, this guy's going to be Mr. Olympia one day, and then they disappear, and you talk to them later on, and they're just like, man, it wasn't fun anymore. So moving out to Dubai, I did know that the Benosh gym out here is definitely one of the best gyms in the world. They're literally building on it every day. Every day it gets bigger. They add to it. They're buying all the properties around it. But it's ran by a bodybuilder, someone who did shows. So all these new equipments that are coming out that are really cool, he's getting, but also has like a lot of the old stuff that, we grew up using. So I knew the gym was going to be amazing. I knew that was going to be great. But the reason I wanted to move out is I wanted to be by myself. I wanted to go back to how I was doing this in the beginning when it was just me doing bodybuilding and nothing else. So when I came out here, that was the goal. But when I came out here, man, the people are amazing. The gym is seriously the best gym I've ever been to in the world. And everything is just kind of like different. I think because Dubai is different than the Middle East. My American friends that we're all ignorant in America, but we think of things outside of the country. But they keep thinking I went to Kuwait, and they keep thinking it's all the same. But it's not. It's really beautiful here. The beaches are beautiful here. So if there is a time that, when I want to take a day off the gym, I can go to the beach and have a good time. I can go sightseeing. It's the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. There's just so much to do here. But the people are so supportive here. And I think it's something that you even take for granted where you live, because when the things you post on social media, I mean, everyone is so supportive. You yourself are supporting these guys that are just tiny, and they're just starting out, and you're making them feel so good about themselves. And that's how it is here. Everyone just loves bodybuilders. Where in America, if I'm doing well at my gym, it makes somebody else feel like I'm taking money away from them. And I don't think they're doing it on purpose, but over time, it starts to build up this hate. And that's what it is. And unfortunately, America's just filled with a bunch of haters who feel like you doing well is stopping them from doing well. And that's just not the case. It's not true. So it's that in a nutshell is really why I've moved out here and decided to stay. I'm not leaving.
Okay, so do you rent an apartment out there, or like do you live alone, or how does
Yeah.
it work?
Yeah, no, I'm by myself. I have an apartment. It's crazy. The reason why I'm even out here is, so long story. In 2018, when I did the Olympia, I was going through really, really bad depression. I wanted to kill myself, and there was a lot of things that I went through with my divorce. And the only reason why I even did the Olympia was just because the person that was kind of helping me kind of get my head right was also going through something at the same time. And we both decided, you know what, I should go do the Olympia, because I didn't want to. I qualified for it, and I was just kind of like messed up, and I didn't want to go. And she got me to go do it. And I did it, but I wasn't happy. I didn't really want to be there. And I knew obviously I wasn't going to place that well. It was the year that I got second at Tampa to Alexis Ramirez. And when I went there, I was working the athlete meet and greet, you know, and it's so crazy because everyone left. Every single, they left because they have to get ready for the, fucking Olympia. And I just knew, like, I'm not even going to be in the first call out. I'm lucky if I get in the second call out. So I didn't really want to leave. I just kept talking to people and I stayed at my booth. And a guy from India came and he was just talking about how much of a great experience that I had given him. And he was just saying that he lives out in India, blah, blah, blah. So then now, fast forward, what, 4 years later, 5 years later, he asked me to come out for an appearance to India. And that's what I did last year. I went to the Mumbai, India Mr. Olympia that they had just as an appearance, worked the booth. And I think when I was out there, because I love doing what I do, not on stage. I love the meeting people and, maybe even giving someone kind of a different perspective of bodybuilding, meeting someone and saying, man, you know what, I would love to do that. So I think I just gave them such a great experience that they were like, man, if you ever wanted to move out to Dubai, they would help me with the citizenship and the residencies and all that to kind of get transferred over. So I went back to America and I did Legion. And I think I realized then that leading up into that show, it just wasn't fun anymore. And I wasn't enjoying myself. I was just getting so hard on myself. This isn't good and that's not good. So I was like, man, you know what? I might as well take this guy's offer and go out to Dubai and just redo this out here. So it's so crazy that I'm out here and now this is the best I've ever been doing. I'm lifting the best I ever have. I'm happy. I'm literally having so much fun. And it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't going through that depression to even stay 2 hours later at the athlete meet and greet to even meet this guy. So it's just another reminder that, man, everything happens for a reason, especially the bad. And, I was just contemplating not even wanting to be alive, let alone go to the Olympia. And now because I sucked it up and I went there and I met this guy, now my life is completely changed and I'm going to come back, I swear to God, like a completely different person.
Let me go back a little bit before I ask about, because there's a little bit things to touch about there. When you said you almost want to kill yourself,
well, I tried.
And what?
I tried twice.
So in bodybuilding, we have had a lot of people that train hard. Where we're in the gym, there's a lot of us who've had depressions. Keon came out with it. We know Luke Sandow. Sadly, I believe I don't want to say too much, but what happened there. There's so many young guys that flock and girls that come to the gym and kill it. And all of a sudden, you hear about story. Oh, they killed themselves or they disappear. When you say you almost tried to kill yourself, what happened and how did you get out of this? Because there's so many people watching who probably in the similar things right now. And when we look at you, like 300 pounds and a superstar of bodybuilding, and many people thought maybe, how can he be depressed? But talk to us. What do you mean you almost killed yourself and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, so it's not bodybuilding that I think is making anyone depressed. I don't think bodybuilding really made Luke depressed. I don't think it made Keon depressed. I think we were dealing with things in our personal life. And then this whole, you got to suck it up and do a show because your sponsor's going to drop you. That only fuels that, toxic, mental toxicity that you have in your mind, whereas a regular person could just take a break. They could just take a break from social media. They could take a break from their life. And that's something that people don't want to talk about, and using Brandon Curry at this last Pittsburgh show is a perfect example. This guy finally wanted to take a break, clean his body out, get off the gear, spend some time with his family, and then he does a guest posing because Pittsburgh, you have to guest pose, if you're one of the Mr. Olympias. It's just part of your requirements. So now we're gonna attack this guy. We're gonna talk about how he shouldn't look like this, and this is a bad example of bodybuilding. But I'll tell you this, if he had stayed on gear, maybe stayed unhappy, and then he did something, took his life or something like that, then we would all be saying the same things we said about Luke. Oh, I wish we knew. Oh, I wish he would have just talked to somebody. Why didn't he just take a break? Because that's the same thing that happened with Sean Roden. That's the same thing that's happening with everyone who we're losing. No one wants to talk about the pressures of never being able to take a break. Because if you take a break, you lose your sponsor. And you lose your sponsor, and like people like Sean, he has to take care of his kid. He doesn't have that choice. So it's so simple for people that are not real bodybuilders or not even really fans of the people to be like, oh, they should have just stopped. Well, that's just not how it works. You don't get to do that, So I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I can guess everyone that does have any kind of mental health issues, it's because of the strain of having to still juggle bodybuilding and cater to everyone's needs, because it's not just catering to your fans, it's catering to your sponsors, it's catering to the sport, because the sport gets upset with you too if you disappear for a long time, you know, and that's just the hard part. So for me though, I had went through my divorce. I've talked about this before. It was actually on Muscular Development, like the last interview I ever did with them. And I was going through divorce. I found out my wife was having an affair, and I went through all that. But it was actually the woman. So my wife left me for another married man. He left his pregnant wife for my wife. So they ran off together. So, and that's who I was saying is really the person who got me through it. Because after that happened, I was getting ready for the Chicago Pro, and I was like, yeah, that's it. I'm just not able. My thing, it's not like a just suck it up and work out thing. People don't understand eating. Eating is such a hard thing to do when you're unhappy. Unless you're like a depressed eater, where when you get down, you eat more, which some people are. That's not my thing. If I have any kind of, stress or anything in my life, I can't eat. So I was just like, you know what? I'll just take the year off. This is in 2018. I'll just take the year off and just not do any shows. Not forever, just for that year. And this woman who is pregnant, with her husband leaving her, is like, you know what? You need to suck it up and do this show. Win Chicago, qualify for the Olympia, and you know what? And do what you're supposed to do. And how do you argue with that? How do you complain and be a crybaby when someone's pregnant, on their own? She's on her own too. She's going through the same thing. I don't have a kid. At least I don't have a kid, So I was like, you know what? You're right. I did. I sucked it up. And that's why that show was so huge for me to do that Chicago Pro. And then I got second to Michael Lockett. Yeah, it was rough. It was a rough loss, And that's what I learned too, that bodybuilding nowadays isn't just who's the best guy to win. Because if you want to talk about body part per body part, his back is amazing, but that's it. I really beat him, but I learned then the expectations from me are a lot higher. And they knew that I could look better. I could have been in better shape, and that's true. So I got second because of that, So, and I never really talked about this before, but the internet blew up. So excited that I lost. And it's something that's definitely new that the 90s and 80s bodybuilders didn't have, is nowadays people are excited when you do bad. It's a real sickening thing to do, because we still think of bodybuilders like they're NBA stars or football players, where, yeah, you lost that competition, but you're still bringing in $1.2 million, because they're always quick to be like, oh, well, when somebody misses a basketball shot, I'm sure you're like, oh, LeBron sucks. Yes, I do. I do be like, oh, man, he missed that shot. He sucks. But he's still rich. He's still paying all his bills. He's not making any less money because he missed that shot and lost the game. Where a bodybuilder, you lose that match, you lose that competition. Now you got to figure out how to pay for your family, pay your bills. So it's such a sickening thing now. And that really is probably the start of when I started to really stop loving bodybuilding, is when you see how excited people are that you did not do well. It's not like I was like a blessing, or a Nick Walker, where I'm going into a show saying, I'm going to win the Olympia. I'm going to win this. Never. You've never heard me ever speak like that. I've never even said, like, I'm going to go into this show and win, But people hear that whenever you talk about, like, oh, I'm doing the best I ever have. I want to go in there and kill it. They kind of manipulate their own thing in their head, and they change it to, Sergio said he's going to win the Chicago Pro and no one's going to beat him. And they did that the same thing when I tried to get everybody to do the Arnold. I wanted everybody to come together and get the Arnold. They're like, haha, you lost. You said you were going to win. When did I ever say I was going to win? It's so crazy. So I lost that show, and everyone was so excited. Nick Trigili did a whole video about how great it was that I lost, and I'm putting synthol in my butt. It was just crazy shit. So I was like, that's it. I'm done. And again, that girl, Shani is her name, and she was like, so there's one more show left in the year. It was Tampa Pro. And she doesn't know anything about bodybuilding. And she even figured out the point system. And she's like, so if you just get first or second, you qualify for the Olympia and you go for sure, because it's the last show of the year, So at the end, that was it. No one can get any more points. And again, it was just one of those things. How do you argue with someone who was literally at that point, she just had the baby. And now she's had this baby, and she's still calling me. We're still talking every day about how great it'll be if we go through this. I still go to the Olympia for the first time, because when I won New York, I passed up to go to the Olympia. So this would be my first time going to the Olympia. And again, you know what? She's right. So I did. I called Chris. I even went through, it's so great. I went through this like crazy bender. I ate. I ate so much after Chicago because I was in Chicago. And for people that out of the country that don't know, Chicago has this big festival called the Taste of Chicago.
Okay.
And it happened to be happening that weekend. It's a place where you can go and you can try every restaurant in Chicago. It's like a crazy thing. So
Yeah.
I ate until I threw up. I was so sick. And after I talked to her, I was like, man, you know what? I called Chris Aceto and I was like, man, you know what? Let's do it. And we did. We killed it. The transformation I changed in 2 weeks from puking from eating too much to taking second place at the Tampa Pro. It was like winning the Olympia. It was an amazing feat that I did. So I got second. I went and I was able to go to the Olympia. But getting ready for that Chicago Pro show, yeah, there was twice. Once when I already tried to take pills and I tried to kill myself. And there was another time that I didn't know what I was going to do. But luckily, my best friend, who's been in my life forever, it's a girl. Her name's Katie. Anyone who's seen me, she's my workout partner. She just stayed home from work and she didn't leave my side. And there was even a time that I even said that I didn't know what I was going to do. I just was worried that I was going to do something. It was just one of those things because I've heard of people talking about being depressed or they're having suicidal thoughts, and I never understood that. And if anything, I used to get mad when people would be like that because I would be like, it's such a selfish thing, you know, especially when people have other people who rely on them and you take your life. But I get it now. What it is you cannot turn off these thoughts. It's like no matter what you do, your mind goes back to thinking about whatever is messing you up, you know. And mine was just so simple. I mean, mine, what, my wife cheating on me, they're having an affair. It's really so small, you know, when you really think about it. It's a small thing, but people are going through things that other people might not think are a big deal. But yeah, you just want to turn off those thoughts, and that's the only thing that you can think of to do is just to kill yourself.
So you literally took the pills.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Yeah, then I threw him up.
Okay. Mm. Do you go to any type of do you get help from this now? Do you speak to someone or like is there anything?
No, so my issue, like I'm saying, was actually easy because it was just one thing that happened to me and then it was over. It was just me not being able to get over my mind would just start trailing. I would start thinking of things like, oh, that means that was this and that was that. And there was just so much that was going on. I was able to get over it because now I've met someone who's an amazing person and I met her family and I met her friends. So because this bad thing happened to me, I have all these new people in my life
Mm.
that really kind of made it where it was a good thing, you know. And now I can finally say that everything that happened to me that almost took my life was the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life.
Wow.
So that's how I was able to get over it because all the new people and the new relationships and the things that I have now in my life are better. So it was easy. It was an easy fix. I didn't have to go to therapy. I don't have to worry about being on suicide watch. I just had to wake up and realize, man, my life is actually better because this happened. So mine was simple. But for other people's, it's not that simple. You know, sometimes people are fighting different demons that aren't really from someone else doing something, you know. And I think that's what was happening with Luke. I don't think Luke's was a girl broke his heart and, you know, he was just upset about it. I think it was a serious thing that he's been dealing with for probably a big part of his life. And those, I don't know. I don't have advice for someone how to, you know, fix that because he obviously had good friends. Look,
Yeah.
he's surrounded by Chow, you know, and James, you know, and there's probably so many other people that are good friends that just aren't famous bodybuilders that we don't know.
Mm.
And they couldn't help him. So that's just a perfect proof that yeah, sometimes it's just uncontrollable. And I don't even have advice for someone who's on that type of level. Because even a therapist, like there's just so many bad therapists out there, you know. You might have the luck of meeting a good one. I know I have friends that go to therapy and they rave about their therapist, but that doesn't mean that's the right person for you. So sometimes you might have to try a couple to maybe meet someone that can help you with those things. But I promise you, this is something that is not being talked about in the bodybuilding world. It's like the concussions in football. And once a few amount of people start taking their own lives, it's all of a sudden going to be important because Keon is the most perfect example of someone realizing they have this problem. He didn't have this woman that I had to kind of tell him to suck it up and go do the show. He was dealing with it on his own. You know what he did? He decided, you know what, I'm going to put my own mental health first before going to the Olympia. And what did the bodybuilding world do? They destroyed him. They talked shit about him. You know, he's not good enough. He's not mentally strong enough to do this. Maybe he should retire. If he had took his own life, every single person who wrote those fucking comments would be saying, oh man, I feel so bad for him. Prayers for Keon's family. If only we had knew. So I think it's going to be something that's, you know, in the future we're going to have to deal with, because we're so quick to talk about the gear and, oh my God, gear's killing all the bodybuilders, even though gear's not killing any of these bodybuilders. I can't speak for the women. Women have to deal with a different type of hormones than the guys do. The issues that we're having with the women are not the same with the guys. It's a completely different thing. You know, maybe George, you know, we don't know. I don't really know what the autopsy was with George, but that's probably the only one, because we all want to forget that Sean was told by his doctors, you know, that he needed to take a break. But yeah, he decided that that was not something that he could afford to do, because they were telling him that he was going to be able to get back on stage. He cannot take that break. Cedric was sick with respiratory issues and a bunch of other sicknesses that he's been dealing with. Cedric told me backstage at the Legion show that we did together that he was pronounced dead.
Wow.
Dead.
Really?
And they brought him back to life. I don't know how much before the show, but since the last time I'd seen him and talking backstage at the Legion show, he passed away. It might have been for a few seconds, but no matter what, he died. Brought him back. And that's what I remember telling him. I'm like, Cedric, get out of here. Don't be here. And if you would have seen his face talking about how he letting people down, it would make people really, really evaluate the way they go at bodybuilders, because the toll that we are putting on our life and our mind, it really has nothing to do with gear. That's the easy part. So those, and Luke took his own life. So every case, and Dallas choked. People who do not want to, the people who have an agenda are going to block out the things that take that agenda down, you know? So if they block out that Dallas was choking or he was having an issue with insulin or something like that, if they block that out, then it's just, oh, well, he had a bad heart and the gear was going to kill him eventually anyway. That's because you want that to be your agenda. But nobody wants to talk about this, because when you do that, even what I just did right now, I'm kind of downing everyone's situation. When it's very serious. Everyone, no matter what, is gone. We've lost them. But let's talk about the real reasons why they were gone. What were they dealing with? How long was Luke unhappy? You know, how many times did someone meet Luke, had a great experience, thought he was such a great, nice guy, and deep down he was just dying internally, you know, from mental issues. So I'm so glad that Keon, that's actually brought me and Keon really close when he decided to come forward and talk about that. We were always really close, but now he's like one of my closest people in the sport that competes, because we're able to relate and talk to each other about that, you know, and I think we need other bodybuilders to come forward and talk about it. I was able to talk about it with Sean and Cedric all the time. And now that they're gone, I don't really have someone that I can be like, you know, is this a serious thing, or do I need to suck it up? Because there is times you do have to suck it up. When you're dieting for a show, man, your brain, of course, we all have mental, you know, bad health when you're dieting. But is it serious? Like you need to take a break? Or is it a suck it up, throw some dirt on it and get up and do it again type of thing? And if you listen to social media and the fans, you're going to for sure end up dead.
It's before we go into it's such a, sometimes I hope people on social media, like especially when you said you guys are not getting paid like a basketball or a football player, you know, you are this constant training and eating to look like you guys do. With sometimes some people spend their money, don't make any money on, even if they're pros. And then to have guys just come and say you look like shit, or you look like this, or you need bigger legs, or you look like this. It's social media is, I just wish people would have some more respect. And that's why I like it when you block people, because you just, you know, because I've seen people say, oh, Sergio is such a crybaby, he just blocks me. No, you get blocked for a reason, you know? And
yeah, if I blocked you, you definitely said something that's not giving your opinion. But that's what they'll always say. Oh, I just gave my opinion and they blocked me. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know for me, you for sure said some shit over the line because they are right. They are right to a point. They can give their opinion. And one of the examples you gave when you were just naming, you said, oh, you need bigger legs. If someone said, hey, you need bigger legs, you need bigger back, there should be no bodybuilder that has a problem with that. That is perfectly okay.
It's the way they say
you
it.
saying that you're a fucking bitch ass pussy and got no back, that's a completely different statement, you know? Or people start talking about people's families, they start talking about their relationships. It's those people who are getting blocked, you know? And everyone's so tough on social media because you don't know who these people are. 90% of them are a private account. They don't even put their picture. But I think the biggest issue is, and I know that I always attack social media, but this would help everybody if people started going to the shows more. Because when you go to the shows, you realize, like I remember when I was young, I didn't really like Marcus Rule. You know, I'm a Flex Wheeler, Sean Ray kind of like Kevin Levrone bodybuilder. That's who I liked. And when I saw Marcus in real life, I just was so in awe, you know, seeing Gunter and a lot of these just huge people, no matter what my preference is, because everyone has their preference in bodybuilding, you know, it made me have respect for him because I couldn't get over how many times I kept looking at the guy that I said I don't even like. So sometimes going to a show, you see things, seeing Rolly in real life, seeing his arms and what they really look like in real life, it makes you realize, man, you know what? He may not have the legs that I want. His lat spread might not be what I want, but man, he did a really good job on A, B, and C because I never realized that in a picture. And that's the hardest part with social media because if I take a picture of Bumstead and I take a picture of anybody else, it doesn't matter. Because they're scaled down to the same picture size, it looks the same. And that's what bodybuilders fans think now. They think a classic guy and an open guy, they should just be the same thing. An open guy could just look like a classic guy because why can't he just make his waist a little bit smaller, work on a vacuum? But then you see them in real life and it's literally like a giant and a smaller person. You start to realize, oh, okay, I get why things have to be a little bit bigger, you know? And I was the biggest Ronnie hater. When Ronnie, you know, at the end of his career, I was just like, oh, this is a bad example of bodybuilding. You know, he went on Jay Leno's show and he did his little, like, stripped away his pants. I was just like, no, you know, it's just so embarrassing because everyone's going to think this is how bodybuilders are. I tell you, when I saw Ronnie train in real life and I saw him compete in real life, I shut up. I shut the hell up right away because I realized too, I don't know shit. You don't know shit when you're watching from a screen sitting on the toilet. So that's the hard part.
Guys, we are hoping you are enjoying part 1 of the interview with Sergio Oliva Jr. Guys, check out Black Skull USA for some tremendous supplements. And remember to go to Victory Clothing to check out Sergio Oliva's own clothing line. Part 2 will be out soon. And remember to subscribe.